The Galactic Council had debated humanity's admission for 3 cycles, their scaled and tentacled forms shifting nervously in the crystalline chambers of Nexus Prime. Admiral Zethkar of the Hegemony Fleet spoke with the authority of 1,000 conquered worlds. "Their weapons are primitive," he declared, his 4 eyes gleaming with dismissive confidence. Chemical propulsion, crude nuclear fission, metal projectiles that barely breach atmosphere. They pose no threat to our energy shields or plasma arrays. Ambassador Velthari from the Trade Coalition nodded her serpentine head in agreement. Their largest vessels are laughably small. Their fastest ships crawl through space like wounded prey. What concern could such a backward species possibly present? High Counselor Mordain, ancient beyond the memory of most species, remained silent. His people, the Eternal Watchers, had observed the galaxy's rise and fall for millennia. Something about the humans troubled him, though he couldn't articulate why. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would be granted provisional membership, relegated to the Outer Rim territories, their expansion limited to a handful of systems. They would serve as a buffer between civilized space and the unknown darkness beyond. The humans accepted without protest. 5 years later, the first reports trickled in. Human colonies had established themselves with unprecedented speed. Where other species took decades to terraform worlds, humans had somehow made barren rocks bloom in mere seasons. Their population growth defied all projections. "Impossible," Admiral Zethkar muttered, studying the holographic displays in his command ship. "No species expands this rapidly. There must be an error in the data." But the data was correct. Humans had claimed 47 worlds in 5 years, each one thriving, each one contributing to a growing network of trade and communication that stretched across their allocated space like a spider's web. The Hegemony decided to remind them of their place. The assault fleet arrived at the human colony of Haven's Rest without warning. 12 Hegemony dreadnoughts, their hull-mounted plasma cannons charging with lethal energy. Admiral Zethkar expected swift capitulation from the terrified colonists below. Instead, he found something else entirely. The human ships that rose to meet them were indeed smaller, cruder, built of metal and chemical fuel just as the intelligence reports had indicated. But they moved with a precision that made the Admiral's tactical computers struggle to predict their patterns. They fought with a coordination that seemed impossible for such a young species. More disturbing still was their response to losses. When a human vessel was destroyed, the others didn't retreat or falter. They pressed forward with increased aggression, as if the death of their comrades had somehow strengthened their resolve rather than weakened it. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice trembling with confusion. "Their smallest fighters are conducting ramming attacks against our capital ships. They're deliberately sacrificing themselves." Admiral Zethkar watched in growing horror as human pilots drove their tiny craft directly into his dreadnought's shield generators. The shields held, but the sheer audacity of the tactic left him speechless. What kind of species deliberately chose death over defeat? The battle lasted 18 hours. The Hegemony fleet limped away, technically victorious but devastated. They had destroyed the human colony and most of its defenders, but the cost had been unthinkable. 7 dreadnoughts damaged beyond immediate repair, thousands of experienced crew dead, and for what? To destroy a single minor human settlement. As they retreated, Admiral Zethkar's sensors detected something that chilled him to his core. More human ships were already en route to Haven's Rest. Not to mourn or investigate, but to rebuild. They were returning to the very place where their people had died, ready to start again. The reports that followed painted an increasingly disturbing picture. Humans didn't merely occupy worlds. They bonded with them. They didn't simply establish colonies. They created homes worth dying for. When attacked, they didn't calculate acceptable losses or seek negotiated settlements. They fought with the desperate fury of a cornered animal, but with the tactical brilliance of a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. Other races began to share their own encounters. The crystalline hierarchy spoke of human traders who somehow always managed to complete their deliveries, even through pirate-infested space where larger, better-armed convoys had failed. The Void Swimmers reported human rescue ships diving into collapsing stars to save stranded vessels, missions that no sane species would even attempt. But it was the testimony of Captain Rexhigh of the scavenger fleet that finally made the Council understand what they were truly dealing with. "We surrounded their supply convoy near the Demon's Gate Nebula," he reported, his chitinous shell clicking nervously. 3 cargo ships, 1 escort frigate against our entire raiding fleet. They should have surrendered immediately. He paused, antennae twitching with remembered fear. Instead, the escort ship turned directly toward our flagship. It was damaged, leaking atmosphere, its weapons mostly destroyed. But it kept coming. The human captain opened a communications channel, and I expected to hear pleas for mercy or offers of surrender. Rek'Sai's voice dropped to a whisper. Instead, she simply said, "You want our supplies? Come and take them." Then she accelerated directly toward us, all power to engines, ready to ram our ship rather than let us claim their cargo. The scavenger captain had ordered a retreat, not because he couldn't win the fight, but because he suddenly understood that winning against humans came at a price few species were willing to pay. High Counselor Morden finally spoke the words that had haunted his thoughts for months. "We measured their strength by their weapons," he said to the assembled council. "We counted their ships, analyzed their technology, calculated their firepower. We thought we understood what they were." His ancient eyes surveyed the chamber, meeting the gaze of every representative. "But we never measured their will. We never calculated their refusal to yield. We never analyzed their capacity to choose death over surrender, sacrifice over safety, principle over pragmatism." Ambassador Velthari shifted uncomfortably. "Surely you're not suggesting we should fear such a primitive species?" "No," Morden replied quietly. "I'm suggesting we should respect them. Because a species that fights not just for victory, but for something worth fighting for, is the most dangerous force in the galaxy." The vote to grant humanity full membership and unrestricted expansion rights was unanimous. Outside the council chambers, Human Ambassador Sarah Chen smiled as she read the decision on her communicator. She thought of Haven's Rest, already rebuilt and thriving. She thought of the 1,000 other worlds where humans had planted their flags and called a place home. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and humanity was just getting started.